Ah, Smart Water. Pure, crisp taste.
That's really good water.
It's the kind of water that says, I have my life together.
I do feel more sophisticated.
Smart Water. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
$1 million. Free to play. You just need to survive. It's the Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Pick one team to win each week. Get it right, move on. Get it wrong, you're out. The last fan standing take home a guaranteed $1 million cash prize. And for every player who joins, we add $1 to the pot, up to $10 million. The Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Play free on the Fanatics app. App access open to all. Must be 21 plus and joined by 9/8 to play. No purchase necessary. U.S. only. Void where prohibited. Subject to complete terms. See fanatics.com/game rules.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Joining me now is Alan Wilson. Alan Wilson is South Carolina's 51st Attorney General, re-elected for a fourth term to that office on November 8th, 2022. Since becoming Attorney General, Alan Wilson has focused on keeping South Carolina's families safe, defending their freedom, and protecting their futures. As Attorney General, Alan Wilson has defended the Constitution and the laws of his state, even if it meant challenging the federal government. He's protected South Carolina's right-to-work laws. He's helped lead the 26-state challenge to the federal health care mandate. He's successfully safeguarded South Carolina's voter identification laws, and he has fought to protect its immigration laws in court. Alan Wilson, as Attorney General, works closely with other Attorney Generals across the country to protect the rule of law and to defend the Constitution on issues as diverse as Obamacare, EPA overreach, Yucca Mountain, religious freedom, and many other issues. Alan Wilson also served his country. He joined the National Guard immediately after graduating from college. He was called to serve in Iraq, where he earned the Combat Action Badge, and today Alan Wilson continues his military service as a colonel in the South Carolina National Guard. Alan Wilson is also a candidate for governor in the Palmetto State's upcoming gubernatorial election. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But Attorney General Wilson, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Hey, Roger, it's great to be with you. Thank you for having me on your program today.
Well, hopefully some folks in South Carolina will listen. We've got a pretty good listenership across the country due to syndication. Also, we have a huge audience in the greater New York area, and I think a lot of people will be interested to hear about your incredible record. I saw that you filed an emergency appeal with the U.S. Supreme Court in a last-ditch attempt to block a transgender teenager in Berkeley County from using an inappropriate restroom. This August 28th move came after the federal courts earlier this month temporarily prohibited the enforcement of a state law requiring students to use the restroom corresponding with their assigned and actual gender. Tell us about this movement.
Well, Roger, you're pretty much right on the facts, but I would like to say it a different way. I'm not really trying to block anybody. I'm trying to protect the 99.9% of all boys and girls who want to go into bathrooms and locker rooms and shower rooms and be in a room with people of the same sex that they were born to. That's what it's really about. It's not really about blocking the 0.01% of people who have gender dysphoria, but about protecting and promoting privacy and public safety for our kids when they go to our schools here in South Carolina. Basically, last year, South Carolina passed a law that said if you're a school and you receive state government funding or appropriation, you must protect the privacy rights of these kids and prohibit people of the opposite sex from going into showers and locker rooms. There was a transgender student who I believe a female identifying as a male, who wanted to be able to use the men's locker rooms and showers and bathroom facilities. So they sued, this individual sued the state of South Carolina. It was upheld at the district court. And then it went to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which, as you know, Roger, has become very liberal in the last 20 years. But the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals stopped South Carolina's law from going into effect while they consider the merits of our argument. We are going to the Supreme Court to say to the Supreme Court, this law needs to remain in effect while we continue to litigate this. Because, again, it's about the 99% who we're trying to protect. And so that's where we are. We are hopeful that the Supreme Court will hear our plea. But even if they don't, this thing is far from over because we haven't even had the hearing at the Fourth Circuit yet.
So I want to focus, if I could, for a moment on the immediate aftermath of the 2020 election, where I believe there were many anomalies, irregularities, and there's substantial evidence of outright voter fraud in that election in a number of states. You were involved in a 21-state coalition with other attorney generals that blasted the partisan circus that was being put on by Democrats. You filed an amicus brief with attorney generals from 15 other states in support of President Trump's appeal of the $355 million judgment New York State Attorney General Letitia James's case against Trump for allegedly making false real estate statements. That case, of course, was overturned recently by the appeals court. So much for that piece of lawfare. You also joined a coalition of 24 state attorney generals to oppose the gag order when they tried to silence President Trump imposed by the court at the behest of special prosecutor Jack Smith. Jack Smith's appointment has subsequently been declared unconstitutional. It was never confirmed by the U.S. Senate. There is no law creating his position. And now there's a serious investigation into his own conduct at The Hague and while working for the Justice Department. So you have stood up for the president, both in South Carolina, in the 2020 election, and in this relentless tsunami of lawfare that the president faced in New York State. And for that, I have to congratulate you. You did not do this without harassment against you personally, endless investigations. Tell us about the aftermath of the 2020 election.
Well, Roger, thanks for asking about that. First off, this is not something I've been able to talk about for nearly 4.5 years. It was in the days following the lawsuit that basically, what you had is you had the state of Pennsylvania, where judges and unelected bureaucrats were basically changing election laws to allow unmarked, unpostmarked ballots, unsigned ballots to come in 3 days after the election was over, which state law in Pennsylvania did not allow. And, of course, we want to protect the integrity and security of the Electoral College, and so we raised that to the Supreme Court because if, the Constitution says that only the Congress can change it, but otherwise it is left completely up to state legislatures, not judges, not bureaucrats. And so, Clarence Thomas agreed with us in a dissent. We lost on standing grounds, but not on the merits. But the whole point was there were a lot of irregularities. There were a lot of, state judges who were exploiting the COVID-19 pandemic. So we brought that lawsuit. Roger, over a 4-year period, I had 32 complaints filed against me, costing me over $100,000. They were seeking to take my law license. And I wasn't able to talk about it until after this June, where the allegations were ultimately dismissed because I did nothing wrong. But, like I said, Donald Trump is the most attacked president. There has been no one who's been attacked more by the intelligence systems here in this country, by the court systems, and by the criminal justice system. It has been weaponized against him. I got just a little tiny taste of what he's going through. But the reason I did it is because if they can do this to Donald Trump, my God, what can they do to normal citizens of this country without resources?
Well, Alan, you are now a candidate for governor. Henry McMaster, who has been a friend of mine all the way back into the days when he was a U.S. attorney under one of our greatest presidents, Ronald Reagan, an outstanding governor for your state, is termed out, cannot run again. And there is a very spirited contest for the Republican nomination. You appear to be at the top of the pack, separated by a few points, depending on which polls you think are right, with Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Now, I know Nancy Mace. I've followed her career for a long time. She did not stand tall when you filed that lawsuit. In fact, she very specifically said that she would not support that court case because it disregards the principles of federalism and relegates too much power to a single state to mandate federal policy for the rest of the country, all of which is incorrect. Nancy Mace was a bitter critic of President Donald Trump. Now suddenly she's posturing herself as a MAGA candidate, trying to claim to have been a Trump supporter from the beginning, which of course she wasn't. She allied herself with the anti-Trumpers. She closely aligned herself with former Vice President Mike Pence. Then, after the January 6th demonstrations and the subsequent fallout, she regularly appeared on CNN, MSNBC to blast President Trump, castigating his supporters and undermining their demands for simple election integrity. After January 6th, Nancy Mace said, "This is a very sad day for our nations. I'm devastated and I'm heartbroken right now. This is not who we are. I'm so peed off right now because millions of Americans being misled to believe that members of Congress can single-handedly overturn the results of his presidential election via a vote to object to the Electoral College. Actually, the Senate is required to certify the elections of the results of the Electoral College. That's a legal fact. Perhaps Congresswoman Mace is unaware of that. The other great fallacy, of course, that I find amusing is this whole idea of fake electors. There is no such thing as a fake elector. In 1960, it was thought election night that Vice President Richard Nixon had carried the state of Hawaii. Senator John F. Kennedy filed an alternative slate of electors because he disagreed with that and believed that after all the absentee ballots were counted that he would prevail. Initially, the slate of electors for Vice President Nixon were approved, but Kennedy was right, and after all of the absentee ballots were collected, the alternative slate of electors were seated. Nobody charged John Kennedy with a crime. There is no such thing as a fake elector. If there is pending legal disagreement and legal action regarding the outcome of a state's election, having an alternative slate of electors is not a crime. Although I predicted correctly before the election that the left and the Democrats would seek to make it a crime. It is unbelievable to me that Nancy Mace now suddenly decides that she's a Trump supporter when you were subjected to enormous professional criticism and legal harassment. They tried to take away your legal license. They tried to sue you because you stood up for the truth. You stood up for the Constitution and the law. She was MIA in this fight. Now suddenly she's decided that she's a Trump supporter. I guess being in politics as long as I have, I shouldn't be surprised, but, she looks like an opportunist to me, to be quite honest with you. And I think South Carolina Republicans should be very wary about nominating such a candidate.
Well, as I travel the state, Roger, I'm talking to people every single day about what they want in a governor. They want someone who's going to be an agent of reform. They want someone who's going to be an agent of change. They do not want an agent of chaos. They want someone who will support the president's agenda, defend the president's agenda, and has a proven track record of defending the president. You know, there are candidates in this race who are chaotic. They would rather be reality TV stars. There are candidates here who can support the president when everything's going great, but I'm the one candidate who laid his livelihood on the line. I'm the one candidate who was with the president during the first impeachment, when he was impeached the first time in the U.S. Senate, which was a felonious it was a wrong thing for the Senate to do, for the House to bring those charges. But I have been supporting the president now for nearly a decade, and you have people here who come and go. They're back and forth depending on which way the winds are blowing. The individual you just talked about is a person who was for Kevin McCarthy before they voted to throw him out of the speakership. They were for Nikki Haley when she was raising her money, and then they were against Nikki Haley. They were for Donald Trump before they were against Donald Trump, before they were for Donald Trump again. So it just depends on which way the political winds are blowing for some people. But I have been consistent in my support of the president. And again, everything that you said is true. People here in South Carolina see that. They recognize it. They don't want that as their governor. And I think the polling and I think the results of this coming year's election will bear all of that out.
You know, Nancy Mace likes to say that she's Donald Trump in high heels. I think she's more like Nikki Haley in disguise, if you want to know the truth. Look, I think that we don't endorse candidates here. I think very highly of you and your record, and I was very honored that you could join us today on the show. More people need to know about your record. Running for office is an extraordinarily expensive and time-consuming endeavor. It's all-consuming. Where can people go to learn more about your candidacy?
Well, Roger, they can go to wilsonforsc.com. That's Wilson, FORSC.com. They can learn about my platform. They can contribute there if they want to, and they can learn about my history. You know, Roger, I have been endorsed by 75% of the Republican sheriffs in South Carolina, and we have major members of the business community coming out later this fall. Again, I want to say one thing to you. Everyone knows your biography. Everyone knows what you have been through. Everyone knows that you have been there with the president at the very beginning. And I appreciate you for allowing me to have the opportunity to come on your program to talk about our record of defending the Make America Great Again movement. And I just appreciate you, and I appreciate the president, and I hope you'll have me back on your program in the future.
Alan, thank you very much. One more time, give us that email address where people can go learn more about your candidacy.
WilsonForSC.com, Wilson, FORSC.com.
All right. Thank you, Attorney General Alan Wilson, the 51st Attorney General of the state of South Carolina, for joining us today on the Roger Stone Show. Don't go away, folks, because we'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You know, I don't get my news from CNN for the same reason I don't drink out of the toilet. I watched Erin Burnett the other night. She really should be ashamed of herself. She had a segment having to do with the head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, Bill Pulte, in which she essentially claimed that all of the allegations that were referred over to the Justice Department regarding New York Attorney General Letitia James, former Congressman, now Senator Adam Schiff, and Dr. Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve, were inaccurate, were false, that somehow Pulte had made them up. This is why there are more people listening to this show right now than are watching CNN. This isn't journalism. This isn't news coverage. This is bald-faced propaganda. You can always tell when Erin Burnett's lying. Her lips are moving. And then she cut to Van Jones. Now, I find Van Jones to be somewhat fair-minded. I mean, he's a liberal. He's a Democrat. But half the time he makes sense. But then he came up with this ridiculous argument that if Republicans seek justice, if we seek to enforce the law, if we seek to prosecute those who made up the entire Russian collusion hoax from whole cloth, the people who lied, the people who fabricated evidence, the people who kept all this material classified, well, then when the Democrats get back into power, they might hold Republicans to the same standard. Here's the part you don't get, Van. Your friends like Joe Biden, who should be charged for the bribes he took as vice president and sent to prison. Chairman of the House Oversight Committee, this is not conjecture, the chairman has proven the multi-million-dollar bribes that Joe took. Joe has no immunity for the criminal acts he and his family engaged in when he was vice president. But you say that if we hold these people to the legal standard, that when they're back in power, they'll try to destroy us. My friend, they already tried to destroy us. They tried to send me to prison for 7 to 9 years, even though Robert Mueller admitted in his final report that he could find no evidence of Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or any other illegal act on my part. They tried to destroy my friend General Michael Flynn, who did nothing wrong. They tried to bankrupt Donald Trump. They tried to keep him off the ballot in 50 states. They tried to send him to prison over crimes in Manhattan that they can't even define. This has nothing to do with revenge or retribution. It has to do with the law. And your friends, Van, like Joe Biden and Susan Rice and FBI Director James Comey and CIA Director John Brennan and Robert Mueller and Andrew Weissman, the single most corrupt prosecutor in history, are going to face federal charges. They're going to be fairly tried, and my guess is they're all going to be found guilty. It's not about revenge. It's about recalibrating the scales of justice in this country. So your argument that if Republicans now enforce the law, like Bill Pulte that the FHFA is doing, the Democrats will somehow get back in power and seek to destroy us, my friend, they have already tried to destroy us. And through the grace of God, we have persevered. We have survived that persecution. And now those who put us through hell, those who violated our rights, those who violated the law, those who made up this entire canard of Russian collusion must be charged and punished. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?